my number one man, my best friend in the world.
The man I would lay down my life for, make no mistake about it. I would take a bullet for this man. I talked to his mother just the other day and let her know if there's anybody I love, if there's any house I want to be in, it's the Moore house.
With that having been said, so TK, I gotta ask you a question to kick things off.
Man, hey, do it, brother. Ain't nothing off limits.
Because you are such a patient man, and like
Am I?
Your willingness to, at least that's how I see it, your willingness to put up with things that may be like annoying from other people in order to get to something valuable is much higher than mine. And I admire that. You get a lot of valuable stuff that I miss out on because I'm so, ruthlessly efficient. Let's move on. Move on. And then often I'm like, okay, now I'm bored. I'm antsy. And you're never bored because you're mining for gold. Anyway, move that flowery analogy.
Never bored. I got the Holy Spirit.
So just before this thing, I tweeted. So you and I we were both in some. This is the first time I've ever done one of those like rooms on Twitter, like the Twitter version of Clubhouse. And it was
me too. Yeah.
It was like BTC as a Ponzi scheme changed my mind. And so you were like, dude, this is hilarious. Hop on. Yeah. So I hopped on for a minute and saw some familiar faces on there, Dean and Satoshi and some others. Anyway, and it was just this debate, and it was hilarious. I mean, it was kind of sad. It was like some really angry gold bug type guy just ripping all these BTC people to shreds. And these poor BTC kids, yep. They're just like, okay, I won't describe what they are because that's what I want to ask you. So as we're conversing and listening to this, and we're just kind of laughing on our own little chat, I tweeted, and I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't tweet things that I don't feel like I have the energy to explain. You know what I mean? I'm like, I know what I mean, but if you don't get it, I'm sorry. If you don't get it, I can't explain it to you. Risk, finance, right? No, I tweeted, basically BTC kids are like somebody who took half a red pill and then ran away excited before they took the whole thing. And some BTC kid was like, he liked it. And then he's like, hey, and he had laser eyes in his profile. So there's not a lot of hope for him, but he said,
I don't think it was some BTC kid. I think
it was a BTC kid. He said, hey, I consider myself a BTC kid, but I don't know what you mean by this. Can you explain it? Okay. And I instantly felt tired. So now I'm going to ask you, TK, to a genuinely well-meaning person, a BTC kid, and that's what I call BTC people now, who's like, what do you mean? What do you mean I took half a red pill, but not the whole thing? What is your answer to that person who's asking what is meant by that?
You correctly bought into someone's pitch of the problem without developing a nuanced understanding of what kind of solution will work. Classic example of what happens when people go to multi-level marketing meetings. Someone gets up and what do? They spend the first half hour talking about how so many people are overworked.
Hey,
they feel unappreciated at work.
Sure would be nice to have about $5,000 a month coming in without doing anything.
They talk about how everybody's got cash flow problems, people living from check to check, and they paint a picture of the problem that's so real and so many people resonate with it, right? They really do a great job at selling the importance of having financial literacy and being financially independent. And people hearing that for the first time, they feel so inspired by it. They're like, well, what's the way out? And then that person say, all right, we're going to sell these vitamins, or, we're going to sell this whatever this is. You get 10 of your friends to sign up for it. You get yourself some residual income. And the person who is the first to introduce you to the idea of passive income becomes the most trustworthy person in your eyes for whatever method they have for creating passive income. And that's a classic example of correctly buying into someone's pitch of the problem while not developing a nuanced understanding of what kind of solution would actually work to resolve that problem. And you see it happen in crypto all the time. People, they might read a copy of, the creature of
Jekyll Island.
Yeah. or maybe they watch some videos where they hear some libertarians talk about principles of sound money. They get exposed to the lies we've been told about the central banking system and the fiat scam. And they say, man, what? And they take half of that red pill. And then someone says, all right, and now we have a solution, and it's this. And they're so excited that there's an alternative that they just latch on to it without thinking through.
And it's so easy because it's like, hey, okay, here's all the reasons that government monopolized money sucks. Great, I'm with you. And then, hey, there's a solution. It wasn't created by government. It's decentralized. You just use that word, it's enough. It's cryptographically secured, so humans can't tamper with it.
Censorship resistant.
It's mathematical and has a fixed supply.
Programmable money.
And that's really attractive, and that's really exciting. What's interesting is people who get excited about that, like you said, their excitement stems primarily from the problem, that they're really glad that now they don't have to deal with that problem because something's been invented to fix it. And when you ask, like, what is Bitcoin? Why is it going to work? Why is it going to fix it? You either get no real idea or understanding, just a lot of buzzwords, or even just incorrect things because it's encrypted. And you're like, it's not really encrypted. It's, because it's whatever. Or you get them kind of describing what Bitcoin was, but what BTC no longer is, which is kind of an interesting thing. So like, I lost my train of thought. I had something very specific a path I wanted to go down very specifically, and I lost it because I gave too much preface material. Damn it.
Can't
It's
do
over.
that.
Now we're done.
Well,
we have nothing else to say.
Well, I'll buy you a minute to
buy me a
remember what
minute.
it was. Yeah, BTC and that whole narrative is Mr. Charles from Inception. Do you remember him? Where you have that guy that they're the main character whose mind they're trying to like infiltrate.
Oh yeah.
He's not Mr. Charles, but he's in the dream, and they can tell that he's starting to get suspicious that something's off, and they say, given enough time, he's going to kind of figure out what's going on. So what we need to do is, while he's still dreaming, we need to create a character where we come to him and we just red pill him. We let him know about Inception. We break it all down to him. And here's the thing, because we will be the ones to give him the red pill on what's going on, he will also trust us and do whatever we tell him. And then we can lead him deeper into the dream. Right. And so it's like a second level of Inception. And I feel like there's something to that, right? There's something about the person that first wakes you up from your intellectual slumber that gives them a certain measure of credibility and trust in your eyes that could really make you vulnerable to some dangerous self-defeating ideas. In fact, that's what happens with cults. It's rarely the case that cults are started with some person that's completely off their rocker.
Yeah, it's not like, hey, here's a proposition to make you more mentally enslaved. It's usually setting you free from something real. Hey, you are overly controlled by your parents. You need to be independent and not let them control you. Yeah. And the person who sets you free from that becomes the person who's like, you need to cut off all contact with your parents and never listen to them again. And don't listen when they're warning you about me. And right. And I mean, you see, it's funny when you look out and you look at any field, any area of opinion. I mean, it doesn't matter. Pick it: quantum physics, political science, whatever. And you look at all the people out there with opinions. The odds that any one of those is 100% right, or even just that you agree 100% with them, is so low. Let's take sports. The people that talk about sports for a living, the odds that I agree with 100% of their takes on sports are basically zero. It'd be crazy, right? So then you think, but there's something that happens. The odds that the first person who introduces you to a breakthrough idea is the one who you assume is correct about that idea are very high. And so you're like, what if the first time I was ever introduced to the NBA was through Skip Bayless? Because of that, I would have like a retarded idea of what the MBA is all about, because I would disproportionately be like, whoa, he revealed to me the value of the MBA and let me see things I didn't. Now I assume that he's right about most. And if you don't start to, after you get introduced by somebody, if you don't start to find the ways in which you disagree with that entry point, there's probably a problem, because it's incredibly unlikely that the person who happens to introduce you to something is also the most accurate person on that topic in the whole world, right? But here's where I was going to go. Now I remember, because that conversation was called BTC is a Ponzi scheme, changed my mind. And you think about what is a Ponzi scheme. It's something where, the thing that you're buying into, it only benefits you so long as new people keep buying into it, right? Because that's where all the value comes from. There's nothing else. And what differentiates something from a Ponzi scheme is if something can continue to be valuable for you and create value for you, even if no new people enter at all. So look at a company, right? You can have companies can hit an equilibrium. Like look at the restaurant down the road. I could buy shares in that restaurant and it can only ever have 50 people at a time. And it can operate at capacity, but it can never go beyond that. And if the same 50 people fill it up day after day after day, if it's a profitable business, it's still creating value for me. I don't need constantly new people to come and buy pie there for the first time, right? Most businesses are like this, where, again, unless you're like trying to run some, trying to bootstrap some social network and you're like, we'll pay $100 for every new user. We can't sustain that unless we, whatever. You're trying to pump up your numbers for venture capitalists in the short term, but in the long term, you can't. That's what differentiates something from a Ponzi scheme, right? So it has to, if no new people ever adopted it ever again, could it still be valuable? The answer is yes, then it's not a Ponzi scheme, even if it has elements that seem similar, right? And when you look at BTC, it's not like a pure Ponzi scheme, but basically the way that everyone uses it, it's if no new people ever bought more BTC with fiat currency, then its only use would stop being useful, which is that it appreciates in price, because it won't appreciate if new people aren't buying it. Now, something like BCH or BSV or some of these other chains, if no new people come in and buy it, it can still be incredibly valuable because holding it gives you access to functionality that you can't get outside of that chain. It lets you do things, put data on chain. I can store things there if I want to. I can set up smart contracts. It's a token that unlocks usability that you can't get outside of that chain. So you could have a world in which there's only ever 1,000 people that use BSV, and holding BSV could still be valuable to me, because without it, I can't use Twetch, and I really like using Twetch. Me and my 1,000 best friends use Twetch, and that's literally all we do with it. It would be valuable to me. I wouldn't need other people to keep adopting it in order for me to have a reason to hold it, right? And a reason to use it, or for it to be valuable. And I think that's the difference, where BTC has stripped out everything but the hold use case, and that essentially makes it a Ponzi. If no new users came in, what are you getting? I mean, technically people can send it to each other, but why are they going to send it to each other when you can send via PayPal or something cheaper, right? Like, there's not a lot there. So I think it's so interesting that many people who came to BTC, like you said, they get red pilled on the problem. And then they're like, well, it's sound because the supply is limited, blah, blah. And oftentimes they bring with them assumptions about what Bitcoin used to be able to do and what BSV can still do, and to some extent BCH, which is like, well, it's also this ledger, and it's got this attestation system, and there's data. Now, most BTC people at this point don't even say that anymore. They used to, but even the new people don't. They don't even know that it used to be able to do something. And I think people will say, well, look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to have any utility because money is simply a shared illusion. And I agree and disagree with that. To an extent, yes. And the value of anything is subjective. The value of any item is essentially based on what people believe it's worth. However, that value comes from something. It can get to a point where nobody needs to know or care where it originated. And it's literally just, I don't know, everybody just values dollars. So I value dollars. I was bought into a culture where people do. And I have a very high level of confidence that people will value dollars tomorrow because they have my whole life. So I'm going to keep assuming that. And at that point, it is sustained on belief, and nobody needs to know where that came from, but it did come from somewhere. There has never in the history of the world been a money where everybody got together and said, let's pretend this is valuable, and let's all agree to pretend it's valuable. And as long as we all believe the same thing, that it's valuable, it'll be valuable. You keep believing it's valuable, you better believe it's valuable. And they're going around patrolling and trying to force everyone to believe it's valuable. We got to all have the shared illusion.
Yeah.
That's not where it starts. It gets there,
Right.
but it starts with something that's like, well, the dollar is valuable because the US government can point a gun at
That's
me
right.
and say that I got to pay taxes with a dollar. And then they get to go on the right. And it started with gold, whatever. It starts with something valuable, and then it becomes a shared belief. But if you try to start from nothing but a shared belief, that is basically a Ponzi scheme. That is, and it's a cult because look at the way BTC people act. They need you to believe the same things they believe. People don't need you to believe shit about gold or dollars or any other asset. They don't need you to believe that a dollar is valuable, right? Because it's just usable, and people just, so even though it is based on shared belief at this point, it emerged from something else. And the reason is because of game theory. If we get together with 10 people and say, okay, look, guys, I'm going to make up this unit. We're going to call it widgets. And we're all going to agree that widgets are valuable. And we're all going to value widgets. And we're going to value widgets more than anything else. And we're going to use this as our money. I'm not going to trust that you're not going to secretly be like, hey, fuck these widgets. I'll make you a deal. I'll sell you something for cigarettes, whatever else, right? I'm not going to trust that if a better alternative comes, you're not going to use that. It's like, if all we have is shared belief, I'm always going to be worried about defectors and whatever else. If that shared belief comes from something real, we all just keep finding that using widgets is more valuable for whatever reason. In the case of Bitcoin, you need the tokens to do unique things you can't do anywhere else. Well, I can't do microtransactions with dollars. I need it for that. I can't put my deed for my house on chain, or the song that I wrote to prove when I wrote it with a date stamp that's distributed and nobody can steal it with a central server. The only way I can do that is with this token. So that token has some usability. Oh, look, and it's also usable for other things and other people like it. And eventually it gets to the point where no one needs to give a shit about how it became usable. We all just value it at some point. We all just value it because of shared belief. But it has to start on something. Otherwise, the game theory doesn't work. And you see that. You see why the desperation and panic and the proselytization and all the cult stuff, because that's all they've got. If you say, well, what do you use it for? Why is it going to be a good store of value? Because the supply is limited. I mean, I could take a shit in a bucket and say there'll never be more than this shit. Therefore, the supply is limited. And if we all agree that it's worth something, then it's going to be a hedge against inflation, right? Like, it's absurd. That doesn't make it valuable. That may increase the odds that if it's already valuable, that its price will increase in dollar terms as the dollar is inflated, or have these other attributes that you may or may not like. But that doesn't make it the thing, And I just think that's so missing.
Yeah. I think people are quick to use a word like illusion without analyzing their own assumptions around what an illusion actually is. I mean, one observation we can make about illusions is that some illusions are more compelling than others. There's a spectrum of illusions, and it is not the case that every illusion is equally appealing. We can even see this in the distinction between a talented musician who knows how to effectively do sleight of hand and a young apprentice who is not really a master of his craft and doesn't really create compelling illusions yet. The second thing is that an illusion is really just a surreal reflection or representation of reality. So to talk about an illusion means there is a backdrop of reality that we weigh it against. And no one will ever chase after an illusion unless they have a concept of something of real value. So for instance, if I'm on the desert and I'm thirsty and I see an illusion of water, I'm going to chase after that illusion because I have a concept of real water that I'm anticipating, and I have beliefs about what that water can do for me if I can apprehend it. Now, I may be wrong. It may just be an illusion, but I'm still motivated to chase after it because of the anticipation of real utility. And when it comes to money, people, this goes back to the distinction you made between like a Ponzi scheme and a product. People try to weasel their way out of that argument by saying, yeah, but speculation applies to everything. And that's true. Speculation actually does happen with products and Ponzi's, but that's not where the distinction lies. I mean, if I buy a lawnmower it's possible that something could happen in the world that gives me a reason to believe that the value of lawnmowers are going to 10x. And so I buy more than what I need so that I can profit off speculation. But it still doesn't change the fact that if I'm wrong in my speculation, I can still do something with these lawnmowers. I can still use them or find someone who can use them, even if no one buys them anymore. And when you talk about something like BTC, what you have is a shared illusion against what backdrop of reality? The anticipation that I'm going to get rich because other people will buy in. And that's a shared illusion, but it's not a very compelling illusion. It doesn't take a lot for an illusion like that to begin to unravel and fall apart. And so people think that just because they have a shared illusion, that somehow counts as evidence of stability and sustainability. And I mean, we only need to take a casual look at history to see lots of shared illusions that dissolve very quickly under the right conditions. And I don't think BTC needs very many. I don't know what the utility is, to be honest, apart from other people buying it. If no one new enters the market and buys it, even their store value argument fails miserably.
Yeah, I think the only utility is a bet on essentially the people who control the development of the protocol. And maybe people who can build on top of it, is a bet that, well, in the future, someone will build something that's uniquely useful on top. Now, maybe it's a Lightning network that lets you use, do microtransactions and all this stuff. Maybe it's some smart contract functionality that's pegged to the chain. But that is a huge bet on a group of either real people, in the case of the core developers, who do not have a good track record at all of doing anything that creates value, or theoretical people that you hope will come. And it also is a bet that the core underlying protocol will eventually change. Like, there is no way you cannot raise the block size at least somewhat, even just to settle on chain once in a while for Lightning, for example, or increase the supply so that miners can keep getting paid as the subsidy runs out. Well, it's 100 years in the future or 50 years in the future. Well, that assumes that the price keeps going up and up and up. You don't want to have to be contingent on that. If we're saying we want to separate the value from just purely the Ponzi component,
yeah,
then you have to be able to say there's a reason to use it. There's a reason for miners to mine it. And that's essentially a bet that's just saying someone will solve it. In the future, they'll fix it. And that is a very, very high risk thing to bet on. Now, you may be right. And that may be an okay bet. I mean, it's similar with Ethereum. It's like, well, I'm just going to assume that they'll solve scaling. They haven't. And I literally haven't seen anything that remotely looks like it's going to anytime soon. But there's just a lot of smart people there. I'll just assume that they will, right? That's the bet. And BTCers make fun of people for betting that on Ethereum. But that's essentially what you're betting on BTC. We're going to assume that they'll find something useful. It's either that or it's purely just we're going to assume that more people are going to keep buying it. And again, if you're in a position where the only way your investment can stay sound is if no one ever says anything negative and people constantly say positive things about Bitcoin and new people keep buying it all the time. What a horrible, stressful way to live. And what a way to turn yourself into a douchebag that nobody wants to talk to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. It's another related concept is how metaphors have a hypnotic power. The reason why we use metaphors is because they sort of emphasize and bring to the surface certain qualities that things have. When before the invocation of the metaphor, it feels kind of nebulous and difficult to wrap our heads around. So for instance, thinking about time in terms of money, time is very abstract, very difficult to understand. But if we think about it in terms of the time as money metaphor, we can say things like, be careful how you invest your time. Don't waste your time. Don't spend your time. Time literally can't be saved, spent, invested, or wasted. Not literally, but thinking about it in terms of time as a commodity, that's very helpful. But the problem with metaphors is that they always do that at the expense of something else. Every metaphor simultaneously reveals and conceals at the same time. And one of the problems with crypto metaphors is that a lot of the language that we use, it sort of seduces us into these stories that create excitement without any substance behind them. So for instance, Ethereum, we have the world computer metaphor. That's really exciting. And so now what that allows us to do is focus on the evolution of the computer and say, see, at the beginning of the computer, People were skeptical. They didn't understand it, but it eventually became something. And so now we're basing our faith in Ethereum without any evidence for the success of Ethereum because of a beautiful story about the history of the computer, right? Or when people talk about Bitcoin, they say TCP/IP, right? And so now we can shift all of our attention over to the evolution of TCP/IP. And now it kind of stands in proxy for BTC. And it's like, just place your faith in that. And now because that worked, this thing is going to work as well. And when you listen to a lot of the people that talk about these things, they sort of evince that level of understanding. To go back to your earlier point about taking half the red pill, I think if I put a lot of these people in front of 20, 30 normal
what do you
people
mean
in the world,
these people?
But you know, like if I put them in front of like 20, 30 normal people who aren't involved in crypto, and I say, explain it, what are you going to do? Just like say censorship resistant, programmable money, world computer, new internet, TCP/IP? At some point, you got to step back and actually understand what you're talking about and not hide behind buzzwords. And I think that's what's happening. But I also am not too sure that everyone is a victim, because it's not happening without a cause. It's happening because people value something more than they value accurate understanding. And that's not being the one who feels left out at the water cooler conversation. And you kind of victimize yourself when you pride not looking stupid and not being left out over actually having understandings that can make your life better.
And the money and the gains, right? I mean, if Bitcoin BTC had just stayed flat in price or not increased, I literally don't think 90% of the people there,
you're right,
they wouldn't buy any of these arguments.
You're right.
But they buy the arguments because of the price. They pretend that the arguments are independent of the price. They're like, look, these are the reasons that it's good. And it's because of these that the price went high. But really, it's the price went high, and it's because of that you believe in it. And essentially, the only argument is, look, the price is high, right? I mean, you saw somebody in that chat. They're like, well, it's just purely a speculative thing. It doesn't have any utility. Purely speculative. Check the price. It went from $1 to whatever. Like as if that's proof that it is, in fact, valuable. Like,
yeah, one person actually said, because I text you about this, I thought it was so funny. One person says, what, you think BTC is speculative? Huh? It was worth pennies years ago, and now it's worth thousands. That was his argument against it being speculative.
It's like, and that's one of the really interesting things here, because, there's such a capacity. I mean, it still can go way up in price because a ton more people can keep buying it, right? It can go for a long time, potentially, like who knows? And I've always said that. People will be like, oh yeah, have fun staying poor. Like this is like the only argument, that people who, they get mad when you criticize BTC at all, especially if you're coming from a similar ideological position, if you're, Austrian economics and free market loving and all this stuff. And you're like, hey, and I love what Bitcoin was created to do, what I still believe it can do. But if you criticize it, it's like, oh, you're salty, you didn't get in when it was whatever. And it's like, that's the only argument. But
it's so funny though. There should be a requirement that in order to use the phrase "have fun staying poor," you need to own more than 0.00003 of a BTC.
What was I going to say before I mentioned that? You were talking about the TCP/IP. Shoot.
Oh yeah. Last thing I said is metaphors have a seductive power. They can cast spells on us that make us unreasonable.
Oh yeah. So it's interesting. There's even a lot of the properties. Oh, okay. So there's two separate points I want to make. So let me say them so I don't forget them as we go back and forth. But one is the irony of what the price increase for Bitcoin and crypto in general has done to the industry. So hold that thought. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what's interesting too is a lot of these properties that are like touted as reasons Bitcoin's valuable, which again, none of them answer the fundamental question, why is it valuable? They're just attributes that people assume make it valuable, and they may or may not. But even those, censorship resistant, code is law, humans can't tamper with it, outside of government, the supply is capped, it can never be increased. Pretty much all of those are untrue. It's not private, okay, we know that. Censorship resistant,
it's not
less so than cash.
Yeah.
Less so than, not if you're using a credit card, but less so than physical cash. Governments have a very difficult time, if not impossible time, of censoring. If I come to you with a stack of, $20 bills and buy something from you, they can't stop that. They can't freeze those $20 bills. If government decides that an address, a Bitcoin address, has coins in it that have been associated with some sort of, whatever, there are ways that they can track that, can find you, can put you in prison, can potentially even tell miners to blacklist you or tell other businesses that accept Bitcoin to, right? Like, these things are absolutely possible. It is not, there's difficulty levels to this and the value versus the cost and all that, but it's actually easier than cash to do that with. Decentralized to a degree, but there's really only probably 4 or 5 miners total that, if you shut them down, or if you told them you can no longer do this type of transaction, or you'll go to prison, they would stop, most likely. And you can make other miners would pop up and all this stuff. But for practical purposes, a lot of these things that are claimed as the benefits, code not law. Who maintains the code? Do you know what the code looks like now compared to before? It's changed all the time. There have been hard forks. There have been soft forks. There have been all kinds. There's no guarantee what it's going to look like in the future. A small group of people maintain that code, and they can change it, just like the Constitution doesn't prevent anybody. It gets violated and gets changed all the time. So does the code, and so can the code in Bitcoin. It's not the inherent properties of it. It's the incentives in the system that you're betting on probabilistically, not as a guarantee, the probability that it will have some future predictability. And a lot of those are good incentives, don't get me wrong, but they're not nearly as strong as people assume. The supply cap, as I mentioned, the core developers already, there's several of them have been talking for years about needing to raise that because the miners can't collect enough fees in the future because of the block size that's been limited by developers, which was a change to the protocol that, no users had any control over. I mean, developers could change as they did. They removed some functionality where, like, maybe you could bind up coins for a future date. They stripped that out. Now, if you bound up coins for a future date, those coins can no longer be transacted at that future date. That money is now taken out of your wealth. Essentially, it was frozen by developers, right? So, like, these things are they're real. That's not me saying Bitcoin is evil. It's not me saying Bitcoin's worse than the dollar or anything else. That's me just acknowledging you can't have this myopic view. It's got limited supply. It can never be touched. These are just absurd. It's a free market preference. It's like, it's got a lot of good attributes for it. Most of the best of them have been in BTC have been stripped out or ruined. But it has a lot of very real issues. And in many cases, for like free market evade the state, ironically enough, cash dollars are usually preferable. If you're going to do illegal transactions, a lot more people were busted on Silk Road using their Bitcoin addresses as a way to help triangulate who they were than people using cash for that kind of illicit transaction. So there's just a lot of misnomers too, around some of those things that, people assume are attributes that inherently make it valuable. Well, I guess
another one too is the notion that not your keys, not your coins is both true and a marketable concept. Like, people say that with very little understanding of all the various ways in which that can freak so many people out and make them want nothing to do with the system. You mean to tell me that if someone holds a gun to my head and the whole thing is captured on video and they force me to tell them my address and then they go take it, that's just it, that I didn't secure my Bitcoin well enough, that I didn't hold it down well enough, that I was too weak, too soft, it's on me like that? Even if you want to go there and commit to that philosophical argument, you think that notion is actually marketable?
Well, look, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You want to talk about look at the market. If everyone in Bitcoin truly believed and practiced not your keys, not your coins, Bitcoin would be worth very little right now, almost nothing. Pretty much all of the value, dollar value, its price increase, has come from the largest single player by far is Coinbase. And what is Coinbase's value proposition? The entire thing is, hey, forget that not your keys, not your coins thing. We got you. We'll make it easy for you. You don't have to stress about that. And Coinbase is what's brought all these people in to be able to buy Bitcoin and grow the price. Literally by saying, okay, we got a problem. Nobody wants Bitcoin because not your keys, not your coins is not a very attractive value proposition. We'll throw that aside and say, don't worry about that. We'll hold it. It'll be custodial, whatever. The fact that that was done is what made Bitcoin's value rise so much, is throwing out that thing that people claim is the thing that gives it its value. That's the thing that was keeping it from growing in its dollar value. And I'm not saying that because I love the idea. I don't like the idea of a court saying, oh, we find that these Bitcoins go to you. I would much rather live in a world where, okay, we start off with like, no one gives a shit what you claim. You either have the keys or you don't. And that's what determines your ownership. And then the cases where that sucks, where my keys get stolen or whatever, but I can prove that they were stolen and I want to get them back. We come up, the market evolves ways to deal with that and ways to mitigate and whatever. I'm not arguing like, oh, I think governments should determine this shit at all. But I'm simply stating it is not a, oh, this is a wonderful feature that's going to make this thing really valuable. Not your keys, not your coins. There's some things about it that are cool, but largely it's an impediment to the thing being valuable and usable worldwide.
And there's little room for discussion about that without it becoming some sort of rivalry or, some sort of a pissing contest about how bitter you must be for how late you got in, which is why.
Hey, I can tell you for a fact that Mr. TK Kleiman was given half a Bitcoin in probably 2014 or 15 by me.
In theory.
And in like 2012, I was telling him, hey, you should get some Bitcoin. And when Coinbase first launched in like, what was that, late 2012, early 2013, I was like, hey, get on Coinbase and get some of this. And I think he even got on Coinbase and set up an account and I like sent him a few bucks or something. Anyway, TK is an OG, man. He's an OG. TK has ignored crypto at every price point. So it's not like he just, no, I'm kidding.
Hey, it's funny now, man, because just to be clear, I take no pride in being an OG, but like, it's crazy even that, because it was 2017, late 2017 at that crazy all-time high, which is no longer the all-time high for BTC, but it was like 20K, which was when I had my, I got to pay attention moment. I got to pay attention and understand this thing because everybody's been telling me about it, and screw me. If I had just paid attention a little bit, I would be participating in those crazy gains. Now I got to understand. And there wasn't even a BCH at that time.
Man, you know the real story. The real story is you knew and completely believed that you could make a lot of money and this could be really cool. The whole time I was telling you, you never doubted that. But it failed to attract your interest until the WWE dramatic element started to emerge. And you started to see Roger Ver getting shouted at by Samson Mao, and then you're like, oh, hold on, now I got to pay attention to this. This is my kind of thing right now. It's getting drama.
You know what's funny though? Real talk is, I'm all on board with the idea that BSV is a powerful tool, Craig Wright or no Craig Wright. But man, when I saw how everybody just agreed on this one guy, I was like, hold on, that's interesting. People in crypto don't agree on anything. Like, you never have a time where the whole crypto community gets together and agrees on anything. The only thing I know that everybody agrees about is that in theory, there is such a thing as a crypto scam. Everybody accepts that. But you can't find anyone who doesn't disagree about what sort of thing is a scam or not, right? You can find all the scam coins on some exchanges and so forth. Like, that's not a problem if you want to buy them. But man, when it came to Craig Wright, everybody agreed on this guy. He's a fraud, he's a scam, and this and that. I was like, okay, this guy's interesting. I got to look into this, man. I got to hear what this cat's talking about.
Okay, the thing that I put on the shelf, it's sort of an ironic way that things have unfolded. In a weird way, so one of Bitcoin's main hopes and promises for the people excited about it, certainly early on, and most of them still now, is that it is a threat to inflationary currency. And it could potentially put an end to it or put an end to most of the damage done by inflationary currency. What has played out thus far is the exact opposite. Inflationary currency is a threat to Bitcoin. And here's what I mean. The massively rising price of Bitcoin and all other crypto assets is 90% caused by inflation. The inflation, the money printing has been headed first and foremost into the highest risk assets, startup valuations, digital currencies, and then on down the line to tech stocks and then to blue chip stocks or, real estate. But like, that's where inflation goes first before it gets to consumer goods and all this other stuff, because it's like super cheap money. People that already have money, they need to put it somewhere that can get more gains because the savings account is not giving them, returns anymore because interest rates are so low. So
by the way, it doesn't require the people who are behaving in this way to even consciously understand what's happening.
Completely. Yeah, completely. Yeah. And so the massive price rise over the last, decade of all the crypto stuff is a cause of inflation. And what it's done to the people in crypto is two things. One, completely erode their ideology, and two, completely erode their work ethic. And the two things that made Bitcoin dangerous are the ideology and the work ethic. The belief in an honest, sound money that can disrupt the status quo and the work ethic. We're going to hustle. We're going to tinker. We're going to find ways to start Silk Road and to start new things and to put this thing into practice, right? Agorism and all this stuff. When the price just goes up constantly, and every time you launch a new coin, a new token, you just make a ton of money doing nothing, that erodes both of those things. Anything that makes the price go, a dictator in El Salvador stole a bunch of people's tax money, spent it on a bunch of Bitcoin, forced people to use it at their businesses, gave a big welfare handout, $30 a Bitcoin to every citizen, this big corrupt boondoggle. What are the libertarians in Bitcoin? They start cheering for it, right? They don't give it, their ideology is gone.
Hey man, this right here is so interesting because some of the same people that I see super mad about mask mandates, they are celebrating this El Salvador BTC thing. And I guess it's like, okay, so if you profit from statism, it's okay.
It strips it away. You start doing mental gymnastics. Well, it means it's legitimizing, and then it's going to undermine the president of El Salvador is not being undermined. His grip on power is not being undermined by his Bitcoin fandom. He's using it. It's a grift, right? And
we can see that playing out in other ways. Yeah.
Yeah. And they just universally praise it. They don't care. The ideology is gone. And then the work ethic side. And you see this on Bitcoin. Basically, nobody builds anything on Bitcoin at all, ever. And they actually have developed an ethic where they believe it's immoral and wrong to try to build anything on Bitcoin that does anything useful because you're not supposed to use it. You're just supposed to hold it. But even on the other cryptocurrencies, you probably see the work ethic component even more, how much it's been eroded. I've been really looking around at Solana because I'm obsessed with micropayments. That is the use case of Bitcoin. I think there's a lot of other decentralized data, smart contracts, other potential things, but those to me still have some unfigured out things that will people eventually prune the data? How's that going? There's still some things that are unclear. I think they will be breakthroughs. But the one that today, right now, from the day Bitcoin was invented, micropayments, never been possible before, possible today. What you can do with that is insane to me. So that's really exciting. And so, which is why BSV is exciting.
First paragraph of the white paper, by the way, Satoshi's reference to the possibilities of nano transactions.
Yes.
Just kind of gets shelved like it was maybe a footnote that he might have put in there or something.
I mean, Amazing. That's it. That's the breakthrough, especially now that you can send $5 on PayPal and all this other stuff for free. And so I'm really interested in anything that can do that. And I don't have any religious devotion to any, BSV or anything like that. It's literally just, it can do it. It can do it today. And I can go use apps right now today that do that all the time for 1/100 of a penny. And so I'm trying to be open-minded and look at everything. And so I've been looking into Solana, and I go and look at Solana and I'm like, cool. Are there any apps on Solana? Because the protocol, as far as I understand, can also do this. It's probably the only other one that I think can reliably do this. And I don't know about its long-term with its proof of stake sort of combo. I'm not sure on that, but it's interesting enough to look into. So I start going and looking, and it's like, and Solana has had hundreds of millions of dollars that it's raised. And there's entire funds of $100 million by the biggest investors dedicated to only building on Solana. It's the darling of everything. It's massive amount of people building on it. I'm like, cool, let me see all the things. micropayments are usable now in the real world. What are people building with it? What could you do? What are they? Are you, metered hundreds of a penny for every minute that I listen to a streaming song? I mean, people should be experimenting with all these use cases, right? And on BSV, they are only a few dozen, but they are. They're real and you can use them today. I go and look, literally every single thing is some weird DeFi swap product or NFT product where you can go buy a JPEG that anybody that's created by some computer and anybody else can copy. And then you can like stake it somewhere and collect interest in some other token that was just spun up out of thin air and has no use case, and then swap that token for some, and it's all this DeFi. And like, there's a place for DeFi. Dean and I talked about it. There's some really cool things theoretically that it can do. I think fractional ownership of real estate, all these, but nobody's even trying to do that shit. They're literally just doing this coin for this other coin that was made up for this. And then you go and look, I literally found four in the last several months or several weeks, at least, of looking into Solana, actual consumer apps that purport to use micropayments in a unique way. And they're like little arcade games or whatever. 3 of them don't exist. They raised a bunch of money and they have a scammy looking, here's our roadmap, and nothing's ever happened with it. They have a Twitter account that just tweets price pumping shit. One of them exists, but it won't connect to any of the wallets, even though it says it will. And it's kind of like a proof of concept game. And I'm like, this is insane. The world changing technology of being able to send hundreds or thousands of a penny, the number of business models, B2B, B2C, you could build on that is so exciting to me. Why is nobody building? Well, I know the answer. It's because of inflation. Because of an inflationary economy, everybody's chasing gains. If I'm an app developer and I want to go build a little thing that lets you, automatically back up your podcast on chain for $2, and every time someone listens to it, you get 2 cents or whatever, right? Maybe that's a terrible idea. Who knows? But if I want to go tinker with that, think about the work and effort I got to put in, the customers I got to get, and hope that I'm going to take a fraction of a penny from each of those transactions. And maybe once I get millions of users, instead, if I say, hey, we're building the future of audio on chain. Here's our first product, an NFT. It's a picture of a DJ, a little JPEG of a DJ. And you can buy it now, and there's only 100 of them. And then once you buy it, you get access to our special thing where you can swap our token that we issued, and then we'll pay you interest in some other token. And I can literally make millions of dollars and just like tell you that I'm going to deliver a product in the future, but I don't have to. So why would I build something where I'm scraping my way through when I can just launch some shit? And so you see the irony that the inflationary economy, like if I were an evil person and I saw it, and I'm like at the Fed, I'm like, oh my gosh, Bitcoin's a legitimate threat. Here's what we'll do. We'll just inflate this shit out of currency, and everybody in there, we're going to absolutely sap their character and integrity and ideology and work ethic by making them rich for doing nothing. And we will destroy crypto by making it incredibly valuable, by flooding it with so much money that all the people in it lose all sense of doing anything useful with it. It's like sort of what's happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it reminds me of this episode of Black Mirror where I forget the actor's name. I think it's Daniel something. It was the guy who was the lead character in Get Out, where he finds that there's sort of like this corrupt system, and he goes out and he speaks out against it, and he gives this really powerful, rebellious speech, and one of the elites within that system is basically ready to kill this guy for exposing it. And there's another guy that's like, no, don't do that. This guy is useful. Like, don't stop him from telling the truth. Let's buy him out and have him do that for us as a form of entertainment. And they basically bought the guy out, gave him a TV show, built him a studio, and that guy spent the rest of his life being a truther, being a voice of controlled opposition, making a lot of money, living good, and never really felt the need to pursue truth in the way that he used to, because he could kind of get paid to say a few countercultural things. And I think that's kind of a good illustration of what's happening in a lot of places. It also makes me want to get a t-shirt, though, called Anything But BSV. Because I remember when the concept of micropayments was mocked as if Satoshi never thought about it, as if this was completely ridiculous.
It's not technically possible.
Right. And if Satoshi did talk about it, that right there is the proof that he's not God and that the white paper is not the Bible, because clearly he was wrong. And it's funny how whenever BSV succeeded at demonstrating the possibility of micropayments, people just laughed. Oh, it's just a weather channel. Oh, it's just a video game. Oh, it's just a stupid social media site. Nobody wanted to hear it. Then all of a sudden, Solana comes out and micropayments. It's the most amazing thing. To me, that is the mantra of the crypto world. Anything but BSV. It's just like all these Satoshi stories, right? They can put out crap after crap after crap theory about how Adam back or this person is speculative evidence, no substance behind it at all. And it's like, oh, wow, this Satoshi theory is cool. As long as it's not Craig Wright, we'll take it.
I'm going to tell you right now how true that is. So I can say this with a high degree of confidence. I know a fair number of like VCs and stuff from companies that I've run and just people that I talk with. And if you were to pitch a typical VC, even one that's not ideologically committed to any chain or doesn't like have any strong opinion on BSV or anything like that, or really care that much, and say, here's what I want to build. It's some micropayments based thing or whatever. And you said, look, this is how much money this business is going to be huge. It's going to do all this stuff. And they would say, oh, I see your vision. I agree. I agree that the problem you're solving is a real problem. And if you solve it, it'll be huge. And you say, the only technology that works to do it on is BSV. They would literally say almost all the time, anything but BSV. And you could say, well, Ethereum doesn't work. I'd rather have you do it. I'd rather have you build it on Ethereum, knowing that it literally can't work. I would give you money for that, but I won't give you money to build it on something that actually does work today. I would rather have you come up with we'll just make our own token. Here, we're building it on the new blockchain, Isaac chain. And then you don't prove anything about how it works. They'll be like, cool, because they believe in the problem and they believe that your micropayments thing can solve it. They literally would rather give you money to use a technology that literally doesn't work than to use. And again, a lot of that's, Craig's fault and whatever else, but the inability to separate Craig Wright and whatever shenanigans he's up to from just literally the original Bitcoin protocol as it was designed and as it ran until it started to get all messed up, a couple years in, and as it's running today on BSV, and that it literally works. It's crazy. I mean, it just tells you the power of narrative, even over, and the power of appearing acceptable, even acceptable among your fellow contrarians like tech investors and crypto people, that trumps monetary self-interest and material gain oftentimes. I mean, we saw this all the time with Praxis, where it's like, look, I can prove to you right now that you're going to make more money, get a better job faster, be more successful if you don't go to college and you do this instead. People would rather fail at achieving their material goals if they do it not being mocked and considered weird by the crowd. That's secondary to their social status for sure, especially in a wealthy country where you're not, maybe once you're lower on Maslow's hierarchy, social status is less important than not starving. But once you're relatively comfortable, social status trumps that shit like all the time,
Yeah, I've often said that people don't fear failure. They fear being alone.
Yep.
And they would rather fail in a crowd than succeed all by themselves. Failure isn't bad if I did what everybody told me to do and everybody else failed with me and we're kind of all together and we can commiserate. On the other hand, success might not be worth going after, man, if I got to be mocked for it and put up with that for a long time and be all by myself.
So one of the other weird effects of Bitcoin having its price rise so much, and other crypto too, is that I've noticed in a way in which it gives politicians way more power. So let's imagine that Bitcoin was only ever at a few bucks. And so all the people that are using it and buying it and building on it, it has nothing to do with getting rich or any expectation of getting rich. It's like the price is whatever, it's a few dollars, it fluctuates, and we're all sending it to each other all the time. And we're trying to build apps. We're trying to do things that you can only do with Bitcoin because there's no point in just holding it because it's not going to make you rich. If that were the case and nobody's rich from it, and my Bitcoin holdings, my 1,000 Bitcoins are worth like $500 or whatever, and I can just buy new ones anytime, and I'm using them on some privacy market, or I'm using them on some micropayments app or some game. And some senator's like, we are going to regulate Bitcoin and what would most of those people do? They'd be like, I don't give a shit. Screw you. Like, we're just going to keep building stuff. Who cares? Right? Because and the odds that those senators are going to do that are very low. But they have very little leverage. It's like, well, if you're not careful, we're going to not let you use Bitcoin in this way, or we're going to seize your Bitcoin, or we're going to,
it's all optics. It's all
and like,
do-gooder
and if we
optics.
regulate it, then only the hardcore nerds will be using it. Well, that's all who's using it anyway. So like, who cares? We can still build stuff.
Right.
Once it's worth $60,000 and I'm literally rich because of it, and my whole net worth is tied up in it, the minute some idiot senator says, I think we're going to investigate Bitcoin, they suddenly have me at their feet begging. They have power. They have leverage. They have the power to, even if they just say, we're going to reduce the number of exchanges in the world, the price goes down, my net worth goes down, all the shit that maybe I took out a loan against it. They have power over me now. Now I'm panicked. Now I lobby. Now suddenly they get to dangle me on a string. And you see this all the way. Yeah, Bitcoin, it's outside of the state. Yeah, the state can't touch it. And then what do you see? Literally every couple of months, there's some news headline about some politician saying something. And everybody in Bitcoin crypto Twitter is like, call your congressperson. We must get lobbyists. We must stop this. They have power over you now because it only works if people keep buying it. And anything from bad PR from one political press conference can dramatically decrease your net worth and ruin your life plans overnight. You got to pay attention to them. You got to dance to their beat, right? It's a weird, if I'm a politician, I love this. I know that I can totally grift and exploit crypto people now because a lot of them have gotten rich in two different ways. One, I could be the heel, or I could be the face, right? I could be like, you know what? Bitcoin is amazing and I'm going to use Bitcoin. And then literally anything else I do for my entire career, I can get away with it and I'll get libertarians to cheer for me. I could do every anti-libertarian thing ever. But if I'm like, I'm adopted, I'm going to offer all my state employees they can choose to get paid in Bitcoin if they want to. And nobody does. And if they do, they convert it to fiat. It doesn't matter. I can just do some lip service shit. And I'm immediately got this tiny niche of diehard fans who are going to be there for me, devoted no matter what. I could put their mother in prison for nonviolent drug charges. And as long as I say I accept Bitcoin for my campaign, they'd be like, oh my God, he's a revolution. Or I could play the other side. I could be like, I'm skeptical of Bitcoin. We need to come down on it. Well, what does that mean? That means people are going to start sending me lobbyists. They're going to try to convince me. They're going to try to, that means I have power. That means they're listening. Yeah. That means I'm still not convinced. I need to see more. Let's drag this out, right? Why do politicians hold hearings and drag them out? Because they're trying to bilk both sides. I used to work in the state legislature in Michigan. It had a telecom bill debating some change to telecom law. Everybody already knew what the outcome was going to be. They dragged it out for an entire summer because it was pitting Comcast versus AT&T. And as long as the hearing was still ongoing, both Comcast and AT&T had to keep paying money to both sides to keep, and they're like doing this all through the campaign. Nope, we're not going to make a decision. Maybe you should pay a little more, right? It's that exact thing. So anyway, I just find it ironic because the valuations have gotten so high and so many people have so much at stake now. And that's been utterly separated from any revolutionary use cases. In an ironic way, I think the state has become empowered by this, or certainly not threatened by it in a real serious way. I think there's still a lot of hope and there's still a lot of disruptive use cases that can be built, but it's totally separate from the speculative value.
So I got a question for you now based on that. In a lot of discussions I've been having with different people in BSV, there seems to be a dividing line. Some people feel like, man, we really need the price to pop because that's what's going to generate some interest and kind of give us a little bit of momentum. And I'm talking about people that are building, okay? Not people that's like, oh, I just need to get rich. Some people feel like we need a little bit of a price pump because you know what? No matter what anybody says, that's what's going to give credibility in the eyes of some people that we want to bring on over. And then there are others that are kind of like, nah, it don't matter what the price is. It's just so useful. Given everything that you just said, do you think it's better for BSV to continue to hang out, under the radar being stable coin? Or do you think it would benefit from having a price pump, given that you just laid out an argument for why that can be bad, why that was bad for BTC?
Yeah, I think a price pump would be a net negative for BSV for its long-term prospects of legitimately disrupting the internet and all of industry with micropayments and bringing that to the world. And maybe that doesn't ultimately matter if it harms BSV. Something else will eventually do it, but I think it would be a net negative for the long term. With this caveat, it's always kind of a race against time, right? So like, if the price is just so low for so long that literally the thing just dies, nobody can afford to mine it anymore because it just doesn't make enough money compared to other things. Nobody can afford to develop it on it anymore. Nobody's building on it because everybody's so tainted that they don't want to use it because they're thinking of crypto purely as a, whatever. And it literally dies because the price is just too damn low. Then that would be obviously worse for the prospects of, BSV doing all these cool things. So there's some level of price action that, it's kind of like VC, right? It's like the price of the asset is subsidizing the future in which transaction fees are what the market is based on, is what keeps the chain alive. And for now, transaction fees are not the thing, although there have been some blocks that have had 50% or even more of the block reward or the BSV gain be from fees. But I think if you can't get there fast enough, if you can get there fast enough where miners are bringing in, 90% of the revenue from fees, then I think the price really honestly doesn't matter at all. And the fact that it's not pumping is actually a good thing because it forces builders to say, what can I use this technology for that's revolutionary and has nothing to do with the price of the token that is utilized to use the technology? Can I build applications that the end user doesn't even have to know are built on BSV and they don't have to give a shit? They're just utilizing the properties of this, microtransactions, distributed data, all these other things, to do revolutionary things. It forces you to think that way and say, is there a way to make money, to make a really great business based on a technology that solves micropayments, for everyone? And I think that's healthy. I think that's really good. It's hard. It's not fun. You don't get the quick hits of dopamine of going and saying, oh, Twitter's blown up because the price is rising and now we got all this extra money to develop stuff. Obviously, like I said, there's a point at which if the price is so low, then it drains everything. But I think the hard pill to swallow is the one that increases the long-term likelihood of disruptive technology being built on this thing. And that is one where the price is not doing anything insane. It's not going insane overnight or sustaining these crazy, because then the signal to noise ratio gets so bad that even well-meaning people who are trying to build valuable things, it becomes almost impossible to know what's actually valuable because the market will pay you for doing garbage. And if it'll pay you for doing garbage, you have a really hard time of knowing what's not garbage. So yeah, that's kind of a contrarian take, but personally, whatever amount of BSV I hold, yay, the price is going up. This is great, whatever. But I'm like, zoom back and think long-term. I don't look to any cryptocurrency or any other asset that I hold as the thing that's going to make my quality of life and ensure my success and my safety and my wealth and my happiness in life. I look at those as just prudent things to do to some degree to hopefully hedge off negative things. I look at what I'm going to try to build and the value I'm going to create in the world every day as the thing that provides for my family and gives me happiness and meaning. And so if I zoom out and say that, I say, I want a technology that just works and I want people building on it because it works to do something revolutionary, not there to just get rich doing nothing. That's really unhealthy. And I've seen that with all the other crypto projects. So there's a weird way in which I worry about massive, price bumps. You can break through, any of these crypto projects can still potentially build something valuable, even though they've wasted way too much money because they got fat. It's like a startup that raises $50 million when they really didn't, they needed 50,000. It is theoretically possible they could still emerge 10 years later with a good product that's valuable. But the challenge to them, if they just start off with no product and they just are given a check for $50 million, the odds that they're going to find a valuable product for their customers are way lower than if they have a check for $50,000 because they don't have to. It's possible, but they don't have to. They have a longer time to do it, but they're going to get flabby in the process and they're going to lose touch with what matters because they don't need to go earn $1 right now or they'll die. So I do worry about that.
So two things. Number one, Ari said it first, $5 BSV is the optimal price. And two, I think your take is interesting. I wonder though, given what you said earlier about how you're pretty confident that you could take some ideas to a VC and most of them that and if the ideas are good, like it, but they rather you lose by implementing the idea on a terrible chain than BSV. one thing that price does do to people, for better or worse, it kind of hypnotizes them and makes them feel like, okay, that's credible. Like at some point above a certain dollar amount, people just stop listening to the hater noise and they say, man, I'm about to get mine. And those voices kind of just get drowned out. And I think there are scenarios where you could see a lot of the money that's being poured into other places being poured into BSV, because once people start asking questions and they just start listening, they're going to discover that BSV is where the magic is. But right now, people have a really hard time inquiring into it for more than 5 minutes before they're just overwhelmed by claims of fraud and scam. It's just really hard for people to get past that and be able to learn about it.
What I would love, and of course, this is a bit of a idealized notion of price in any market. It never perfectly maps onto any of these things. It's always a bit of a guess. But what I would love is the price of BSV to be as close to based on current demand for using the token and predicted future demand for using the token as possible. So when, let's say, a PR thing comes out, Craig Wright wins a lawsuit or some shit, or there's a rumor and the price spikes from that. I don't like that. I mean, on a personal side, I can benefit from some, dollar increase in my net worth, whatever, but I don't like that for the odds of BSV's long-term success. I think it reduces the odds that it's successful by a degree. And the higher that price spike, the more it reduces the odds of the long-term success. If, however, there was some application that said, hey, we're going to map your entire, whatever, I'll just use some buzzwordy sounding shit, your entire supply chain onto this blockchain, and it's going to be encrypted so that only your company can see it. And we're going to divide it by department and you'll be able to unencrypt. And it's going to solve a problem for you that you couldn't solve previously. And in order to do that, every one of those transactions has a small transaction fee, which is only payable in BSV. So your company is going to need to obtain BSV the same way that you have to buy gasoline to fuel the trucks that deliver shit, right? If you're a delivery company, you need to own gasoline, and you're probably become interested in the gasoline futures market as well, because that's a big part of what makes your operation run. Or if you make things with steel, you own steel inventory and you're buying it regularly, but you're also speculating on the market for the future because you need it to fuel your business. So the price starts going up because enterprises are like, well, I got to buy BSV every month to fund this database system that we have on BSV. And I'm also going to speculate on the future because I think it's going to be more expensive later. So I'm going to buy some now to hedge for later because we're going to need it later. Or maybe I have too much and I'll sell it on the secondary market, whatever. And the price to be based on current and it predicted demand for using the token to transact, to create transactions on chain, to put data on chain, to pay miners to do the thing you want to do, moving value around. That excites me. And whatever that price is, I'm not too scared by that, because if that price goes crazy high, that's a real signal to the market. Holy shit. There is a lot of demand for this tech by these companies to use it for something. Maybe there's other things I can use it for, or maybe, right, it draws in the right kind of attention. If it goes high based on rumors that more people are going to buy it to hold it for no reason, I think that's actually quite detrimental. Again, think of it as a startup founder. If you're building a BSV-based business, and let's say you have 1,000 BSV that you've earned from your customers or whatever, all of a sudden that goes up 100x in price. You don't really have to do anything for a while. You can slow the fuck down. You don't have to keep bringing in new customers and making sure you're taking a 2-cent fee for everything that they do. If you don't for a while, or if you give it away for free, it's really hard to find a business model when you don't need to. You can be like, well, let's just try to scale it and let's not have a revenue model. Because we're sitting on a huge stash that we didn't really do anything for, but the speculative value went up. I think that's dangerous. I think it decreases the odds of long-term success. Again, it doesn't kill it. Again, it's not immoral. It's not evil. But I think it just probabilistically, it decreases the odds of success.
Also, too, man, the kind of person who just stops working on their BSV business, because number went up for them, that's just probably not the person that's going to take this thing to the next level anyway, right? I mean, there's always a level beyond that.
I don't know. I disagree. Like,
let's talk about it, because I don't see how.
Look, you put any man in a certain incentive structure. Willpower can only get you so far. So if I'm sitting there and I'm scraping away, and I gotta get 1,000 people to transact on my app every single day, and I got to keep growing that day after day, or I'm going to go out of business. I don't need a lot of willpower to keep trying to figure out how to serve my customers.
That's right.
If my BSV goes up 1,000x, and I literally have $5 million sitting there, $10 million sitting there, and I can just pay off all of my debt and put a big chunk away, and I can hang out, and I could probably live off that for 10 years or more, whatever. It doesn't matter how much willpower I have. I will be less able to see how to please customers. It's not a moral judgment. It's literally a practical thing. It's a practical thing. You can't expect someone who doesn't need to solve a problem to be as sharp at solving that problem as someone who needs to.
So we agree on that. What I'm saying is that person for whom it's true is probably not going to be the person to get BSV to the next level. So let me use an example, like from the movie industry, right? We can say, what kind of person is going to like transform the way we make movies? And let's say we got a guy who says, oh, I want to be that dude. And he starts out, but then he wins the lottery and he says, oh, well, I'm done because I was only, I don't have any motivation to like transform the movie industry when I'm rich. Okay, that's cool. I got no judgment for that. But chances are no industry is going to be transformed by that guy. Chances are it's going to be transformed by the kind of person who, once they get in it, they're going to be driven by something in addition to that. And they're going to be motivated to use those funds to continue to invest and play the game. Because for some people, the money is just, it's a way of keeping score.
Yeah.
Things like that. So
but
I don't have any judgment either of the people.
I mean, there are people, so like, in the startup world, it's so common to run across someone who's like an angel investor now or whatever. They had a startup, they exited it, they got rich.
Yeah. And that's
cool. They're like 35. And then they're like, they really want to still be doing really cool stuff in the world. But they're like, well, I'm going to invest, I'm going to be an angel. And they just don't have the edge anymore. They're just kind of chilling a little bit because they don't have to. And despite the fact that they want to, that's very rare. You occasionally find someone who it's like, they've had like 5 massive exits and they just keep going and grinding and building something, even though I think his business models are like just a massive subsidy whore. Elon Musk is an interesting case. Like he just, he's made a ton of money, but he seems to still be interested in really ambitious stuff, at least his public persona of that. But that's pretty rare. It's pretty rare. So if you're relying on that, if you're relying on people who get rich doing nothing, still being motivated to do something, I don't want to bet on that. That's why I'm not very bullish on ecosystems that have massive valuations that spike like Solana and everybody got rich and they didn't have to do anything. Maybe something good comes out of that, but I don't like the odds very well, given the incentives.
Well, here's the beauty of the economic system, right? Is we don't have to bet on any of that. We can say there will always be people who are incentivized to do work, and productive labor is going to come from those people, right? Yeah, man. So
stay hungry, staying poor, What do you think? What do you think on the, since we're talking about BSV, let's, there's some open question whether some other protocols could potentially do some of these things, but I know BSV can. What do you think would be the few things, let's say in the next couple of years, that would most dramatically increase the odds of some really disruptive uses of Bitcoin as it was designed, and what could allow BSV to start to transform a lot of industries?
In terms of products and business ideas, or in terms
or just
of
what could happen? Is there, are you one of these people that's like, look, this Craig Wright thing needs to get settled. He needs to win or lose or whatever. That would be the biggest thing. Or is it, we need to get some big enterprises to start, what do you think would be the thing that would most dramatically increase the odds of success?
Yeah. So let's put Craig Wright on a shelf. Cause if we talk about him, you know what I mean? We'll like get into it, and we'll
end this with a little talk about Craig Wright and his court case. How's that? We'll save the juicy drama for the end.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a lot of ways that this could happen. but I do place a premium on the perceived social cost of someone associating their talents with the thing. And I think if we were to see a cultural shift where creative minds and venture capitalists no longer felt afraid of the BSV dissenters, that could be massive, even if that wasn't correlated with a Craig Wright court victory or the BSV price going up. If anything were to happen culturally, some trouble in BSV, some trouble with fiat, hyperinflation, who knows? Some kind of urgent need for which BSV was the only thing that people can use in spite of the fact that they didn't want to. There are a number of things that could happen, but a culture shift like that would be huge for BSV because, as I said earlier, there are some things that are so useful that people only need the opportunity to look at it clearly before they get it. And I believe that BSV is one of those things. I just think it's incredibly hard for people to get a clear look. A second thing is, this is a little bit cliche, it's a little bit stereotypical, but the concept of killer app. I've always believed in that idea. I've always believed that ultimately users are not loyal to the console. They're loyal to the video game that captures their imagination, right? It's like, why do we buy the console? Because Street Fighter 2 just caught us, man.
So that you can torch my technically superior Pistons team with a bunch of bullshit Derek Fisher threes on NBA Live on the Xbox. I'll never forgive that. Half court Derek Fisher, he's like 80%. Come on, get out of
here. Hey man, that was unbelievable the way he lighted up. But yeah, like you look at what Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2 did and just how they changed the game. It wasn't that people loved video games, but those were two video games that captured people's imagination. And you know, the jury is still out on crypto fights and what happens there, but I think we saw some glimpses of that potential when crypto fights first emerged, because there were a lot of reviews and I would watch them just kind of out of interest. And I would watch a lot of non-BSVers review the game. And no one was like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing ever, because they were not BSV loyalists who felt the need to pump it. But they were all relatively positive, like, hey, yeah, this is a cool game. It's got some potential. I'm going to keep playing it for a few weeks and check back in. And you would see comments from people being like, hey, did you know this is a fraud coin? Did you know that Calvin is paying these guys to create the game here? And these video gamers were like, I don't care anything about that, man. I'm just playing a game, just playing a game.
Yep.
And I think, and that kind of combines with the cultural shift element, but something that is just, to quote Steve Martin, too good to ignore.
Yeah.
And we've seen some things play around with that, you know. A third thing could be, I thought we were going to get this when Trump was censored from the social media platforms. There was this moment where a lot of people were craving a social network that was ready. And I have my eye on Twitch and whatever this ping, whatever the heck it was that they tried. I have my eye on these things and I'm like, this is a moment. This is a seize the moment kind of moment, because people were practically begging. Trump was saying he's going to build one, which, you know, which means he was giving a free commercial to whoever would build one. And I don't know what happened, man, but it just kind of slipped away. And I think we're past that moment now where nobody really cares again. There's some slight concern over censorship, but, you know, maybe with the way Twitter and YouTube feel the need to tell us what we can and cannot trust. But I think people are pretty compliant at this point, and I think that moment's passed. But something like that, where the world is begging for some tool because a problem gets so high, those will be a few things off the top of my head, man. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm very similar. Like, look, you know, something that people want to do and that can only be done on BSV is the thing. And, you know, I've seen people be like, yeah, but okay, everybody loves NFTs now. Well, by everybody, they mean a small group of weirdos and money launderers. And BSV can do it with like almost no fee. And you got to pay like, you know, $500 to make a transaction on Ethereum, or like token swap DeFi stuff. You can, it's cheaper. I'm like, okay, there's so much noise in that space. There's a million ways to do this. And people who are into that are not price sensitive about the fees and shit. They're willing to put up with all kinds of crazy shit because if the whole point of NFTs and stuff, the entire point is antithetical to how you had to try to win with BSV. The way you win with BSV is, I don't care if it's popular, it does something cool that I like.
Yeah.
The whole point of NFTs is, I don't care how inconvenient and shitty it is, it's considered cool by other people. Yeah. So it's like people don't care. They almost would rather put up with how shitty if other people see that as a status symbol. The whole point of NFTs is to just burn your money and show how rich you are, that you paid for something that you could have gotten for free. Like it's a status thing, right? That's the whole thing. And, and there's products like that. I mean, that's the whole high-end fashion industry. I'm not saying that's illegitimate, but I'm saying, I don't think that's how you win by saying, it'd be like saying, oh, everybody's buying these Gucci bags, but Gucci, we can use the same leather and the exact same products, and we can sell it for half the price. And then you still get the bag everyone wants. And it's like, no, you don't get it. The inconvenience and the cost is part of the product. So I don't think you're going to win saying we have a lower transaction fee version of all these other things crypto projects do, because those are all social status projects, and BSV doesn't win that game. I think it has.
It's another example of selling the feature of the network rather than a specific use case that solves the problem for a real person.
Exactly. Yeah. Instead of here's something you never thought of, or a game or a product for your business or whatever that you just want to use because it's cool. And it's not just a version of one that you can do on Ethereum, but it's got cheaper gas fees. It's something new and different, and it makes your life better, and you don't give a shit what it's built on. I think that's where the biggest prospects for success are.
All right. Now you promised me Craig Wright.
Yeah. You been following this court case?
Yeah. But right, you know me. So I imagine this is new for you, because over the years, I've tried to bring you in on every celebrity court case, and I don't understand how you could be so bored by them. But I follow them all, man. Casey Anthony, OJ, like I follow all the court cases, bro. So interesting to me.
So you're like you probably know law as well as Craig Wright at this point, right? Do you have like a degree from the university extension program at University of Phoenix in maritime law or something?
Even if I did, like I didn't write 3 papers and read 2 books last night. So Craig Wright is God mode.
Okay, I want you to break down this case from your perspective. What do you see happening right now, and why?
Right now, or what did I see happening?
Just in the case so far. Give me a summary of what's going on in the case and why you think it's going on.
Right now, things seem to be very weird and suspicious, because Craig Wright is doing everything that I kind of expected him to do and thought he should do. But Ira's side seems to be doing things that are quite surprising to me. Let me cover Craig's side first. Contrary to the hopium of like, oh man, everything's going to come out in this case. It never seemed reasonable to me to believe that Craig stood to benefit by providing evidence of his Satoshi-ness in this particular case, because he's on the defense. This is not a lawsuit that he initiated, at least if we're taking it at face value. And that means Ira's job is to try to prove 2 things: that number 1, Craig Wright created Bitcoin, and number 2, my brother helped him do it. And anybody who knows how the legal game can be played knows that really all the heavy lifting is just proving number 1. If you can prove that Craig Wright created Bitcoin, then all you got to do is make the jury not like him, not trust him, kind of see him as a liar. And it's not that hard to convince people that the dude is hiding something and is trying to rip your brother off. We've seen people go down for murder and all other sorts of crimes with circumstantial evidence because a prosecuting attorney was able to create a narrative that made the jury say, I don't trust this guy. Sometimes the person didn't even do it, but maybe they said a lie. Maybe they got nervous about something and got the conflicting details with a story that they told more than one time. Like, it's easy to play that second game. And I know that it's not right, but in terms of legal technicalities, I think it would be smart for Craig, whether he's intentionally doing this or not, to only give up information that he absolutely has to give up put Ira in a position of having to substantiate that he actually invented Bitcoin to, answer yes if they ask, did you write the white paper? But you don't want to come up with your own evidence.
But that assumes that Ira's side, the plaintiffs, actually are in the case to attempt to get money for Ira. So
that's what brings me to Ira's side, right? So when I look at Craig's side, I don't see any surprises. The surprise to me for Craig is if he came out with both guns blazing, like, I'm gonna move some coins, I'm gonna sign, here's an email from 2005. I would be shocked if Craig did something like that in this case. But he's playing it exactly like I thought, like asking the lawyer what he means, like getting corrected by the judge for saying stuff, talking on Slack having to be shut down. He's doing all the things we have come to know and love about Craig, right? No surprises there. He's like the Ric Flair of crypto, man. He's delivering all the interestingness. But yeah, so on the Ira side, which is where it's fascinating, is they don't even seem like they're trying to win this case. And I'm not saying that merely because they're doing a bad job, but I'm saying it because they don't look like they're trying to do a good job. It looks like all they want to do is make Craig look untrustworthy. And I'm thinking, okay, that's half the equation, but do you want this man to look like he has something to do with Bitcoin or not? And when I see Kleiman's lawyer thanking Arthur Van Pelt, a guy who posts every day about Craig Wright not being
Twitter
Satoshi.
Existence is to prove that Craig is not Satoshi, which would completely destroy any case that the plaintiffs have. And they're thanking him. Yeah, it's funny. So I've followed this case really closely because I don't care about the outcome, honestly. Just from an entertainment standpoint, I do. Like, I love what the BSV protocol can do. Craig Wright is a fascinating, entertaining character to me. I have a fluctuating level of probability that he had anything to do with Bitcoin's creation based on, whatever day and evidence and whatever. And I find that to be a very interesting question, but I don't really care. And I'm not like emotionally invested. I don't like the idea of courts determining ownership of coins. I don't like the idea of using courts to settle disputes, government courts, if you can avoid it in general, and suing people and all that stuff. I think Craig exaggerates, lies, talks too much, has done some shady things. There's a lot of weird evidence, all that stuff. So I'm not at all like, Craig Wright is righteous and true and he will be proven right. I'm not coming from that standpoint. But it is totally clear just from looking at it. This case was never brought about getting money for Ira Kleiman that belonged to Dave, getting Bitcoin. It's so clear. The whole way they're going about it.
He looks like a patsy, don't he?
It's very, very clear. Ira doesn't care. He's been paid an amount of money, enough to make him say, cool, I'll go along with it. To say, hey, you bring this case on behalf of your brother, and we're going to use this. And somebody is paying this law firm. And this law firm is way all up in the crypto world. They've launched their own token. They're buddies with everybody, and they're in the crypto sphere. So people in the crypto world are like, we want to use this as a chance to basically convince the world that Craig Wright is a fraud, that he's a liar, he has bad character. And though we can't completely prove he didn't invent Bitcoin, we can leave you with a trail of things that makes you think he's the kind of guy that would lie about inventing Bitcoin and forge stuff. That means he probably didn't do it. Like,
and let's get that on the official record, right? Not just social media. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems to me that there's nothing else that would explain the behavior. That is the goal of the case, 100%. That just seems very clear. I mean, even like I've looked at a couple different lawyers who don't know anything about crypto and don't care, and just watching them describe their take on the case. And they're like, I literally have no idea why the plaintiffs are doing this case. It seems like maybe they're just trying to get some evidence in federal court that they can use in another case, or that it's just an industry play to try to harm a competitor or whatever. And it's exactly what it seems like. It's like, that's what's actually going on here. And I wonder if Craig's side, this is kind of the impression that I've got, that they went into it feeling like there may be something fishy, but also thinking that Ira really thinks that he's entitled to these coins and that he's really going to try to work really hard to prove that Craig and Dave were Satoshi. And so they're focusing very heavily on that. We got to prove that there wasn't a formal partnership between these two. And I think as the trial started, they kind of were like, oh, that's not at play at all. All they're not even trying to win. All they're trying to do is make it look like I'm not Satoshi. So let's try to get this thing ended quick because they're not even bringing evidence. Like it almost feels like Craig's side would rather lose, because then that would be like, well, the court says you're Satoshi and Dave is Satoshi and you owe him some. And Ira's side would rather lose, because that's the whole reason they're funding this case, to say, nope, Craig doesn't owe Dave anything because there's no proof that Craig and Dave ever created anything called Bitcoin. And like both sides almost strategically want to lose, it seems like. I mean, I don't know about Craig's side, but I feel like they possibly knew something was maybe fishy, but have started to put the pieces together that this has never been about. I don't know. It is a crazy, wild thing. It sounds wacky and conspiratorial, but any other explanation is way more wacky and conspiratorial than this. It's a straightforward one.
Yeah, it don't sound conspiratorial to me at all. I'm with you on 99%, except for the Craig side part. I've never gotten the impression that they want to lose this case. I've always had the impression that they want to win.
Technically want to lose, but I think there's a part of them that realizes now, oh shit, winning, which is why they're like, let's just get this thing done quickly. And why you see Kelvin saying, okay, maybe they're not going to present any evidence that makes Craig look like Satoshi, because the plaintiffs won't let them. The plaintiffs are going to object and say, it doesn't matter. We don't need that. And so he's like, well, maybe I'd do that in my other court case, because I think they see, oh, a win could basically be further evidence that there's no proof Craig ever did this thing.
To me, that has always been obvious about the winning scenario. But
I think they assumed that if Dave's side or Ira's side was trying to prove that he deserves some of this money, then they would be forced, as you said, to prove that Craig at least partially invented Bitcoin along the way. And so Craig winning would have come about because, or Craig losing, would have come about because the plaintiff fully proved that, and Craig winning would have come about because Craig responded to their claims that he and Dave created Bitcoin by saying, no, only I created Bitcoin. Now that he sees the plaintiff's whole goal seems to be to make it look like Craig did not create Bitcoin and prevent him from providing evidence to the contrary, winning looks even worse, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, although I think, and it's all speculation here, but I think Craig's side thought it would be in the beginning a good faith argument. And I think they came in thinking, we want to win and our job is easy. We just need to hammer down the point that there's no evidence of a partnership. He's probably going to come with some emails and some evidence to make, Dave Kleiman look like he helped me. He's probably going to reference the things that I said to make it look like Dave deserves half, but we just got to make sure we hammer down there was no evidence of a partnership. And I think he expected a good faith argument. And now I think they're starting to see exactly what you said, which is, wait a minute, they're not here to prove anything. They're just here to make me look bad. This is a media circus. And so now there's a sense of, you know what, let's pull out. You guys got nothing. We already knew you didn't have anything, but we were ready to debate that. But now we're not even willing to debate that anymore because we know you're up to something shady. I think it's more like that. And on the Craig side part, I've always felt that it'd probably be better in the short term for the optics of Satoshi if he lost this case. Mm-hmm. But if he's really Satoshi, I think people have spoken way too casually about how it will be a good thing for him to lose because it validates it. I mean, if he's Satoshi, the last thing you want to do is hand over half of your IP to the people that are financing this case. And I think taking another hit for a guy that's already taken way more hits than anything this court case is doing to him, so would be a super smart thing to do.
Yeah, assuming that he's telling the truth, and that he is Satoshi, or at least that he believes that he is Satoshi and deserves that stuff, then I don't actually mean that they're trying to lose, because as you said, the implications of that, could be much worse. But from a PR standpoint, they realize now that winning this case doesn't do anything for them. Not losing it, good. winning it doesn't help, which is why they're like,
Right.
let's just get it. Let's just try to get out of it. Now,
Yeah.
maybe everybody files those requests for,
I kind of think that
early
too, though. Yeah.
ending or whatever. But yeah, do you think that, so here's where Craig, always sets himself up, because he just makes these huge predictions and promises and claims like coins will move. I will prove everything, whatever. Do you think that's going to happen? And by the time people are watching this video, something like that could have happened. It's Friday afternoon right now, November 19th. I'm gonna post this to Streamanity first, but then I'm gonna post it to YouTube maybe later, so more people can see it. Streamanity people get the first action. So who knows what will be done with the court case by the time anybody's watching this? But do you think that anything new is going to come to light? I mean, so far, really nothing new has come to light, and nothing that would say this is definitive proof that this guy was Satoshi. Anything that we haven't seen before. Do you think that's going to happen in the context of this case?
I can't imagine anything happening in this case that would compel anyone to think differently about either of these characters than what they thought coming into it. I think if you come into this believing that Craig is Satoshi, I don't think you'll see anything in this case that's going to change your mind. You're not convinced by everything that Arthur Van Pelt puts out. On the other hand, if you think that he's a fraud, I don't see how you're going to look at this case and be like, oh, whoa, I was wrong, because it gives you plenty to gloat about, right? It gives you plenty to be like, see, this is exactly what, Jameson Lott wrote about, several months ago. So I don't really see anything interesting. Well, I won't say interesting, because it's all interesting. Like,
so interesting.
I love a good circus, but
I'm like, what is, people are all like paying attention to this trial for this kid from the summer protests. I'm like, what? It's so boring to me. You guys are not paying attention to Craig Wright.
$70 billion civil lawsuit.
Yeah, this is insane. And it's just so entertaining. The characters involved.
Now, I will tell you, the court case lover that I am, I'm very excited about the Copa case. I'm gonna tell you why. Now I know that it sets me up for an easy slam dunk, because I sound like the person that's like, oh, just wait for the next court case, right?
I'm a hopa for the Copa, Copa. Yeah.
There's always one more court case. No, what I like about this Copa case, because we got to remember this Kleiman case was not initiated by Craig. We all know that whether you like it or not, Craig Wright wants to be in the courtroom. That's where he's always trying to get with people. That's why everybody hates him, right? Because he's filing these lawsuits. He want to be in the courtroom. He liked the 91 Chicago Bulls at home court. Like, that's where he want to play.
He's so desperate to go to the courtroom, and when he gets there, like, the judge and the jury like hate him.
Well, at least for the cases that he starts, it looks like they don't ever want to have him. You know what I mean? Like we haven't seen one of his cases initiated and gone through.
Yeah. So he sued Cobra, the Bitcoin.org guy, for hosting the white paper.
Okay, we did see that one. Yeah.
And Cobra refused to. He didn't want to contest it, so he just paid and pulled down.
And that was a win for Craig. Like, his haters won't give him that.
Yeah,
but that was a win for Craig. Yeah.
No matter why you say, well, he didn't want to reveal his identity. This is a guy that's been talking shit and was like, I'll see you in court. And everybody's like, yeah, go get him. And then he's just like, I don't want to. That's a win for Craig. What about,
and he talked a lot of smack leading up to it, right? Like, if you talk a lot of smack about a fight, and then the day before the fight, you're like, he's not really worth it, kind of makes you look like a coward. If Craig Wright had done that, they would have enjoyed that.
Where does it stand with Peter McCormack?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I saw he was talking a lot of smack, and then he like stopped tweeting anything about Craig and started tweeting about how much money this case is costing him. But I don't know where the case stands, or if. And then there's
I don't think Peter has stopped like making fun of him, but I could be wrong. But like, I don't see any signs from Peter that he's like nervous or scared or like respecting or any.
I thought I thought he was deliberately not tweeting about Craig while this stuff is pending. I thought I remember seeing him say that somewhere.
That may be the case. I don't know. I don't really keep up with him like that. Yeah. But let me tell you why I think the Copa one is interesting, though, because I think, unlike the Kleiman case, which, Craig can play defensively and he can play dumb, he can only give up information that he has to. He can even afford, to just like not give any proof and still have some sort of narrative as to why. The Copa case, the claims being brought against him are so strong and the demands being made are so specific that it really is a put up, shut up moment for him. So much so that if he doesn't put up the evidence, Copa wins. What it means for them to win, is that he's got to stop claiming to be Satoshi. He's got to stop publicly claiming to be the author of the white paper and so on. So that one's going to be fun. Even if you are a hater of Craig, that's got to be a fun case for you, because none of these other cases require him to shut up. So if you want him to shut up, the Copa case is the one that gives you the chance to win.
Both sides can continue to believe what they want to believe at the end of this Kleiman case. Is like, there's not going to be anything definitive, in my opinion. Yeah.
Right. And think about how this can be played by either side. Let's say, even if you are the loser of this case and you try to come up with some narrative about how you were cheated, blah, blah, blah. On Craig's side, if he loses the Copa case and they make him shut up, even if deep in his heart of hearts, he still believes he's Satoshi, even if he magically have the keys or whatever, and you can't say anything, they win, right? Because you got to be quiet and you don't even get to explain your excuses and you're impossible to defend. On the other side, let's say Copa loses and they complain and whine about technicalities or whatever. That gives so much power to Craig's narrative, because he basically says, you guys took me to court saying that if you win, I can't claim to be Satoshi anymore. You lost. That's a really good look for him. That means he's never going away. That means he's Michael Myers from Halloween. No matter how many times you kill this man, all you got to do is look away for 5 seconds. Then you look out the mirror. He's gone to come back and haunt you another day. So this is going to be a fun one, man. I'm looking forward to that one. If it ever happens, probably be like 5 years from now.
All right, let's end it on this. Give the people a book, an idea, a video or something that is not about Bitcoin civil wars or whatever, but that excites you about the revolutionary possibility of the technology.
Wait, you want me to give a book that's not about Bitcoin?
No. A book, a podcast, anything you want, but that's not about which version of Bitcoin is better or Bitcoin civil wars. That's purely about what is possible with the technology. That's a hopeful vision of, forget about chains and all this other stuff. The core idea of this peer-to-peer electronic cash system. What's a piece of content that gets you excited about what it can do? You know what I mean? Why is that so funny?
Because you're asking me to do two things simultaneously. Number one, recommend a piece of content that gets me excited about the possibilities of Bitcoin, while also it not being specific to any versions of Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, it can be, but not about why BTC will fail and be. That's just about something that just gets you personally excited about the future, rather than thinking about what's wrong with everybody's version of the present. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. So it's the book that I told you the other day that I'm reading. I got it. Like always got something on me, player.
Good old physical book with rusty staples and coffee stains and everything.
Yeah, man. I always got a book on me.
I can't hear you when you're that far from the mic. There we go.
Yeah, I always got a book on me, player. So, if you get triggered by the any reference to BSV, you probably shouldn't have made it this far. Shame on you.
Good point.
For wasting your own time and triggering yourself. But anyway,
you played yourself.
So a lot of people who are into BTC, they love and reference Andreas Antonopoulos's Mastering Bitcoin book. And when it comes to BSV, there's really not a lot of material out there. You know, if you go on Amazon and you look for a book or, you know, something like that, and a lot of the great, interesting discussions about the economics of it and so on are discussions that were already had a couple of years ago. And so the conversations around it have changed. And so if you're interested in a book that delves into the inner workings of the BSV protocol and the economics of it and the possibilities of micropayments, I'm going to recommend a book called Bitcoin Blockchain. All right. And it's by, I don't know how to say the name because I haven't heard it said, but it's Kapil Jain, Kapil, last name Jain. This book has been real good for me because it's not polemic. It's not talking smack about BTC or BCH or Ethereum, but it's just delving into, hey, what makes this special and how does it work? And it's not even giving some sort of detail apologetic for Craig Wright. So if you're interested in understanding it, if you're one of those people that I've talked to on Clubhouse, that's all about BTC, but you listen and you have respectful discussions and you're like, I just want to understand where you guys are coming from, this would be a good book for that too. So that's one that I recommend. And for all my BSV people out there, I know we got a lot of nerds in the community who, you know, would run circles around this or probably write their own version of it. But for y'all who maybe are not so technically inclined, are interested in understanding it more, that's one for you to check out.
You know, one thing that would change my life more than anything? If
BSV going up to $1,000 a coin?
No, if the books that you recommended over the years were just a better shape and size and had better covers. You always recommend these books and they're always like, they don't fit in your bookshelf. They're like an awkward size, or they're like floppy, or they have a weird cover. It always gets me. I get stuck because I'm like, TK says this is good, but this weird ass book, I can't put it anywhere. It's too big for my end table. You know what I mean?
You want to do an impromptu exercise? I grab like 3 books that I like, and you tell me if you think the covers are weird.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go.
All right, so this is from the graphic novel shelf. I love Mr. Neil Gaiman. There you go. This is Sandman Omnibus.
Okay. That cover is cool looking.
Yeah.
But that is a completely impractical size. Like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to put that thing? How am I going to read that in bed?
Are so dope.
It's too much.
You can read this in bed.
What? Like put like some, put it up on a sawhorse or something.
Like if your wife laying next to you, you can sit it on her back real gently. It'll feel like a massage. And then you can just,
honey, hold this book while I read. That's the kind of alpha I am. I just tell her to do that. She'll hold it up for me.
You hating, brother.
Okay, let's go number 2.
Hey, you know what?
I thought you were gonna bring what's it, Reisman's book, Capital. That's a good one. That's a horrible size though.
Yeah. Hey, so here. Oh man, you know what? Oh, bro.
I'm getting too excited. Do you have a neck tattoo? When you turned, it looked like you had like a prison tat on your neck all of a sudden. Maybe that was just a shadow.
Nah, man.
The fake tattoo, like that fake cup of water. Okay, this is an anticlimactic ending here. So TK always pulls these gems. He'll call me over the years and be like, hey, listen to this. Just listen to this. And he'll read some quote and it will blow my socks off. I'll be like, man, that is dope. Some quantum physics or whatever. And I'll be like, where'd you get that? What book is it? And then he'll kind of laugh. He'll be like, oh crap, I was hoping you wouldn't ask. And then he'll tell me, and it'll be some weird, independently published book by some weird ass person. And it's all crazy, but somehow he found this incredible quote in it. And that's happened so many times that I just decided I'm just going to let him give me the good quotes. And he can read all the crazy. Man, what are you doing? Crawling on the floor looking for, like, come on, we're going to wrap this up. Show me the last 2 selections and I'll tell you if they have awkward covers, sizes.
So you know what happens? I had this excellent book that I'm really enjoying. That's like an intro to IT, but my wife come in here and clean up and she makes it so organized. But sometimes I don't know where my books are.
Her organization disorganizes you.
I know that it's in the right place. I know that when I find it, it's going to be like the perfect place. I'm like, oh, baby, like you organize it so well, but I have to find out.
You were not meant to find it on this discussion.
Hey man, I know you read this one. Money Changes Everything, How Finance Made Civilization Possible. You up on this?
No, I actually haven't read that one.
How about that cover? That's not bad, right? That's cool.
Yeah, no, it's a cool cover. Book's a little thick.
You can read it in bed.
Oh yeah, you could read that one in bed. Okay, you got that one. That one passes. That one
Thank
passes.
You only
and
said
it's not like
it's
one that when you have it at the coffee shop, you have to like put tape over the cover because people are going to think you're a weirdo. Like some of the books was it Sex, Drugs, Einstein, and Elves? It's like not only does it have kind of a crazy name, but the cover, it looks like somebody made it on like Windows 95, like MS Paint. It's actually a good book though.
On this shelf right there.
It's actually a good book. All right, man.
That's a funny title.
What's
Here's
the last one?
The last one. I love this one. This is one of my treasured books. I love this one. It's like a little icon, icon pages. It's called Principles of System Science. Bro,
yeah, I like the simplicity of the red and the white, but the glossy, it just screams overpriced college textbook. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, you find somebody in college who read this.
Well, no, nobody reads the textbooks they buy in college. They just pay
That's
like
true.
300 bucks
That's
for them.
true.
And they sell them back for 20 bucks.
Hey, you need to start a business on Bitcoin where you can give me access to all of these like articles that are published in journals and stuff like that without having to pay $75 for, you know,
Dude,
each article, because the
the
system
academic
is
journal industry is such a scam. Academic publishing is in general. Yeah, we gotta bust that shit up. So, hey, this was a ton of fun as always. Hopefully we'll get the other numpties to join us next time. That's all I got, I guess. It's kind of an awkward ending, you know.
Oh, wait, this was recording?
Oh,
This is recording?
oh boy, I hope I didn't say anything I'll regret.
BSV is well, I
It's
don't
all
really
going on
like it.
chain forever. Not quite yet. We could probably get a video on chain, but it costs a lot. We'll get there. All right, man. Peace.